Welcome to One Bite at a Time, a podcast where I, Chef Wu,
and I, Chef V,
discuss our hospitality industry through our professional and personal experiences.
and touch on all the things that make us smile, cry, laugh, shout, and celebrate, all while figuring out how to set the standard
one bite at a time. So this podcast, from the discussions we had and what we were trying to put out, is mainly something that we would like people that are in the food space to listen to, people that care about culinary arts or invested in it in any capacity, whether you're invested as a restaurant owner or a business owner, or just someone that is a food enthusiast and cares about what is going on in the industry in Lagos.
Exactly. But before we get into it,
Okay.
allow us to introduce ourselves. Let's get to know each other.
Yeah.
So let's do 3 facts. 1 personal, 1 professional, and 1 fun fact.
Who's starting?
You start.
Oh, God. Okay. So, personal, you said personal, professional, and a fun fact. Okay. So, a personal fact about me is I'm the first of 8 siblings. Yeah.
Damn.
And that explains why I'm the way I am. Like, I'm very bossy, very like in charge of everything. But that is why I was the guinea pig. Yeah.
Hello.
Okay, so that was a personal? Professional. My professional one. Now this, I don't know that many people know this, but I started in the hospitality industry working at Five Guys. That was my first ever job in any kind of restaurant, fast food chain, whatever it may be. It was Five Guys.
That's amazing. So you've literally been in the service industry in all categories.
In all categories, because even prior to that, I worked with my mom. She had a catering business, so it's like it's been a long time coming, apparently. And my fun fact is, how do I word this? I was 1 race away from being a great British athlete.
Which athletes? What sports?
Sprints, 100 meters.
Yeah, I can't sprint to save my life.
Track and field.
I can't sprint.
Yeah, so 1 race away.
That's amazing.
Like, 1 race would have completely changed the trajectory of my life, but it didn't happen. We missed the race.
Well, thank God you're here.
I suppose.
Amazing. All right, mine. Personal fact.
Yeah.
I've recently entered my wifey era.
Okay.
Yeah. Just got married.
Latest wife in town.
Latest wife, loving life. So that's my personal fact. Okay. Professional fact about myself. I think some of you know this, but I wasn't always a chef either. So I started off in project management in the fashion industry. Yeah. So I've been in the events hospitality industry, but taking the culinary angle came about 4 years ago. And my fun fact.
Okay, this is what I was looking forward to.
I am trained professionally in opera.
Girl, you're going to have to drop some
But I have stage frights.
Okay, well, we're not on stage. Well, it's just me and you. So you're going to have to hit a note for me real quick.
No, thank you.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, that's a great fun fact.
I know, and we learned some things about each other, which is great. So I think now it's important to talk about why we as chefs are doing this podcast. Like, why us? Why would people want to listen to this podcast first and foremost?
So I really think it's, in order to get into that, we kind of have to go into like our personal stories of how we've gotten here. Yeah. So for me, like I briefly touched on a second ago, my mother ran a catering business in London. My dad has been in hospitality and entertainment my whole life. Back in the day, he had a strip on Alpha Beach. And so it was what I watched growing up. And for whatever reason, all the kind of other things I've gone into in my adult life has always kind of just led me back to food, to service. And so it seems to be like, this is where my strength is. This is where God wants me to be. So that is how I've ended up here as the chef I am now. I ran a business in London, Angry Black Kitchen, for about 5 years. And it was an amazing business, even if I do say so myself, really successful.
No, it was. I remember Angry Black Kitchen. It's amazing.
And then I kind of lost my spark a bit in London. And then I was like, you know what? What is the reason for what I'm doing? Where do I need to be the best version of me in the vision I have for myself? And then I ended up in Lagos. I've been working in the industry then for what now? About over 10 years. If you consider the work I did with my mom and the fact that my first job was in Five Guys in 2013, 14, I've been doing this for a hot minute. And one of my biggest things is constantly wanting to improve yourself, constantly wanting to figure out how you can be better, constantly wanting to improve. And that's really important for me, especially because I am not culinary school trained. I'm self-taught. So there was always a push for me to want to be able to stand toe to toe to people that are culinary school trained. So for me, it's like there's always a want to be better. So I've invested so much time in learning the industry. And I'm sure most people that have worked with me will attest to that. Like when I know my stuff, I know my stuff.
Yeah.
So I personally think I'm a great person.
Sell yourself, mama.
To be having these discussions, because it's not coming from it's coming from a place of wanting to educate, inspire people, but it's also allowing people to know that you can decide that this is what you want to do for yourself and learn it by yourself.
I think we both have quite similar stories of why we're here, because we both didn't start off at a young age saying we're going to go to culinary school and we're going to be a chef in the industry.
Exactly.
We had industry experience before coming into it as, let's say, a professional chef.
Yeah.
So you've been in the industry in hospitality, you've done service, you've seen the ways a business grows, how a business can stay and be sustainable. And for me, because I worked in project management, I worked in events, I saw the industry more from a business point of view, an outlook, let's say. And I have industry experience without being let's say the talent, if that makes sense. I was more the person that ensures the business runs successfully or the event runs successfully, the project. So same way, I came in projects, I came in events, and I was the person that managed these things and looked at the efficiency and looked at how to bring in different people in the industry to make a very amazing product. And so that's how I started off. I'm nearly 10 years as well in this industry. And it was about 4 years ago during COVID when I really took a look at what I enjoy doing, which is cooking. And cooking has been part of my whole life. My mum is a fantastic cook, and I was always in the kitchen from a young age. And it became something so natural to me. But during my teenage years, when fashion seemed a lot more glittery and exciting, I kind of pushed food to the side and said I want to be in the fashion industry. And as a creative, this just seemed like something that made more sense for me. But I rediscovered my love for food during COVID. And that's when I went. So as soon as the lockdown had finished, I went to culinary school just to touch up. I did like a year course. I didn't want to go to the full because I like you, I was mostly self-taught, but I just wanted to do some techniques. And after that, I launched my business, and I feel like I came in with a lot more of a rounding perspective on the industry, because I think you agree with me. We both didn't have a linear progression into the industry. We're not, I don't know how to explain it, but we both have business experience, business acumen. We're entrepreneurs. We understand how business works. We understand how the industry works from different angles and different touch points. So, the same way they might say, like, for example, a chef is a creative and they may need someone to partner with that can bring in the business. We started off in the business and came in as the creative. So I feel like we have the different angles to look at, and that's why we can have a more critical conversation about the industry.
100%. I definitely agree with that. I think it's also worth kind of dissecting how we've ended up here, not just as a podcast, but the facts that we're doing this within the Nigerian scene, and what that transition looks like for us, considering we've both come from London to Lagos. And some people would look at that as you're working backwards, but what was a turning point for you? And like, what is it that has brought you here? What brought you to Lagos? And what was that transition like?
This wasn't always my plan to be a chef.
Yeah.
So I've been a chef for, I'll say 4 years now. But before that, I've been in the production, project management, event, hospitality space. And that is going on 10 years.
Yeah.
So when I first started, this was me in fashion, in entertainments, in arts. And this was what I thought my life was going to be. I thought I was going to be in the fashion space my whole life. And I forgot how much I loved food. So I'll start from the beginning. I grew up in the kitchen. My mum is a fantastic cook. And my earliest memories have always been in the kitchen with her, learning all the recipes. And just being, like, cooking to me was an expression of love with my family. And that's how I express my love to my friends. So it's always been throughout my life, even in the fashion space. That's what I did, just to take some personal time with friends and just have a good time. So when I got into the teenage years, this is when, fashion was cool. Being in that space was a bit more glittery, I would say. And I kind of pushed my love for food to the side to focus on the thing that seemed a lot more interesting. And I worked in amazing spaces. I mean, I started off in the fashion industry. I worked with, if not the top supermodel in the world. I mean, I don't need to mention her name, but I've been doing her events for like 8 years now. And that is where I saw success in my life for the first time. I worked in I traveled the world with her, did all her events. I was managing, producing, communicating with some of the top celebrities, A-list celebrities in the world. And before I was 25, this is what I was doing. It was successful. Everyone was proud of me. It was great. Then COVID happened.
Yeah.
Event space shut down. There was no events for, I would say, 2 years. So there was no other way I could make money, though. I was literally like, you're on your own. Like, you cannot have events and be paid. So what am I going to do? I turned to food because cooking was my peace.
Yeah.
So I was at home making breakfast, lunch, dinner for my family at the time, and it reignited that passion for me. And I started asking myself questions. This is something I've always enjoyed my whole life. And it's still part of the industry of service, I would say. So I've had the experience. I understand how this kind of businesses work. I've always been around food. Even in the events I organized, I would be the one to find chefs to work with and all that stuff. So I understood the industry very well. But I decided that I wanted to take a different position in it and see what it's like to actually be the one in the hot kitchen, literally in the heat.
Yeah.
So once the lockdown happened, once it was lifted, I went to culinary school. So I went to a culinary school called Chef Academy. And what I liked about it was it wasn't like typical culinary courses where it's 3 to 5 years or something like that. I didn't feel like I needed that because, like I said, and which you are, I felt like I was self-taught and I knew the fundamentals of how cooking worked. So what I wanted to do was specialize more in the Michelin techniques, so molecular gastronomy, and understanding the science behind how food works, and then understanding plating. And then what I loved about the course as well is that you do the same time throughout the year that you're doing the course, you're also working in a restaurant.
Okay.
So I got to work in a 2 Michelin restaurant. So I did my stage there, then I continued to work, and they kept me on longer than I needed to be. So I got to really work in each section and understand how a Michelin restaurant works. So I got a full round education, and I will never trade that ever. I feel like that course was so perfect for me because it was very intensive and very practical heavy.
Yeah.
I do not believe in sitting down in a class and doing book.
Best
I
way
think
to learn.
as a chef, go into the kitchen. 100%. Like, school is important, but I think I learned the most when I was actually in the restaurant. And I would say to anyone that's self-taught as well, you may not necessarily have to go to culinary school, but work in a restaurant.
Work in a restaurant,
a couple of them, exactly. So after that, I started cooking for people in London. It was great. And I came back to Nigeria for a bit, then I went on holiday. And I remember so clearly, January in 2021, BBC News headline, England is back on lockdown. I couldn't come back. We thought the event industry was still happening. So I was looking back at, doing both. And I was looking forward to coming back to a job and making money. But obviously with the UK lockdown, there was not a possibility of that. So I had to make a decision and come back to Nigeria. So I moved back accidentally. It was not the plan. I always wanted to come back and work in Nigeria, but this was a move that came earlier than what I planned. And I had to come in and decide what is it that is going to bring bread and butter to my plate now. So I came in, no pots, no pan, no jacket, no company.
Yeah.
And just said, I know how to cook. I know how to work with people. I know how to talk a good game.
Yeah.
So I reached out to my network and I launched Cold Cooks just like that.
And technically, you launched it in London because I had my eye on you way before you moved to Nigeria.
Oh God, that's true. That's true. Thank God I had that soft launch. But because of that, I came to Lagos and I just chose I just reached out to a few people on my network and said, look, I need to borrow your cutlery and your crockery for now, but I'll come in with a fantastic menu. Take a chance on me and let's make some magic. You know, there was only a few prominent chefs at the time still, so they were open to getting some more affordable options, I would say, at the time.
And that's the thing when you start,
Exactly. And once I was able to build some of that monetary income, I was then able to reinvest it back in the business and grow it to where it is now. And yeah, I mean, it was accidental, but I would never trade how it happened, because I came in fully diving into the deep end and I got to grow with the industry at the same time and network and meet amazing people on the same journey with me. And it was amazing. I think that's my story, really. And I'm still there. I'm not where I want to be. But it's still it's a evolving story, definitely. Absolutely. For sure. And I think yours is a bit different, but
similar.
It's quite similar.
Right. Yeah. I started my business, Angry Black Kitchen, in 2017. Started as a cook show, a cooking talk show. So I would cook in my home kitchen and we'd have conversations on it was about the Black experience in the UK. Something that was very close to my heart. So I kind of merged two things I love, conversations and food, cooking. And then that went well. And off the back of that, I had a lot of people like, oh, when can we taste your food? Oh, can we order? And I was like, oh, yo, it's not that kind of party. But then it was just like, it kind of made sense. So at first I wasn't sure. And then I took on a job, which was a marketing role, which was something I had done a lot in the past. And the guy literally turned around and was like, actually, we're not hiring again. And it was a small business, but he paid me 2 months in advance. He was like, I'll pay you for the rest of this month and next month because I know I've taken you on and whatever. He was really nice. And I felt like that was a blessing in disguise. So it just kind of, this was 2018. It was February of 2018. I remember it so vividly because he paid me for Feb and for March. And then I just took that money and there was a charity or something and they were doing an event. I was like, hi, can I just provide food for this event at cost price? Because they're a charity. I was just like, I wanted an avenue
opportunity to test
it. Exactly. So I did that. And then off the back of that, things just kind of went up. It was so weird. That 2018, so Black History Month in the UK is in October. I sent out cold emails the whole of, was before October, September. Sent out cold emails, and that's Black History Month, October of 2018. I was booked at Twitter headquarters, Facebook. Where else was I booked? I did quite a few bookings. I did like 4 high-profile bookings, and I was just like, okay. So obviously, I threw this on Twitter. I was an avid Twitter user at the time. Threw that on Twitter, and it just kind of blew. And that was kind of where it started. I realized there was money in the corporate catering industry. I realized that, I had enough knowledge of marketing because I'd done that work before. I understood how to run a catering business because I'd watched my mom do it and I could pick her brain whenever I needed to. And so that happened and it was great. It was really good. It was very lucrative for me. Then pandemic happened and everything went everything felt like it was just it felt like the end of the world. And I remember I was depressed for a hot minute and I had one conversation with someone and then I put out a menu for weekly orders. And when I did that, loads of people ordered. And I was like, okay, this is great. And then I remember for about 6 weeks straight, I was making about £600-700 a week. That's a lot of money. And so I was like, okay, I'm figuring it out. Then things started picking up again. Off the back of that, I started doing online cooking classes. Off the back of that, I launched my products range. So many things happened off the back of the pandemic. But at the same time, because the whole world was kind of just turning right in front of our eyes, I also started, after a while, to lose the spark for it. Like, I felt like it was a performative kind of...
Not where you really wanted to position yourself.
Yeah. So I was just like, okay, is this what I want to be doing? Or after 2-3 years of doing that, I was like, I really need to decide what I want to do. What is my trajectory for the business? What is it that I really want? And my thing had always been Nigerian cuisine, Nigerian ingredients. How can you make something people are not used to? So like when I first did the plantain crumble, I remember putting that on Twitter. You have to keep in mind, UK Twitter and Nigerian Twitter are slightly different. So you had Black people, Caribbeans, Nigerians, everybody just in a complete uproar because what are you doing to plantain? And that was when I was like, okay, I like a little bit of controversy. I like the fact that people are unaware of what we can do with our ingredients. And that was where that kind of light bulb moment happened to me when it comes to our ingredients.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I get to like 2021 and I'm like, I don't want to be here no more. Like I was losing the passion for it. Yes, I was running a business and it was lucrative, but was I enjoying it? Was it what I wanted to do? Was I positioning myself there because that's where I wanted to be? Or was it just because I was making money? And I feel like when something that was once a passion becomes just a sole means of making money, you kind of start to lose the joy in it. And then one day I just decided I wanted to move to Nigeria. Like that's where I wanted to be doing it. And everyone looked at me like I was mad. I looked at me like I was mad. But it made sense in my head. And I said I was going to make it make sense on paper. So I moved to Nigeria in 2022. Like I didn't even give anybody time to like come to terms with it. I just upped and left. And since then I have worked in quite a few restaurants. I have helped open a few spaces. I have collaborated with a few people and I've hosted some dinners. I've done quite a few things in a short space of time, but I also started picking up on things in the industry. And that was where like having conversations with people like you and just other chefs that I was able to just sit down and talk to, like without sounding, because it's so easy, especially with me as someone that is not from Nigeria. I say not from Nigeria, but not like born and raised, like didn't have much of a life in Nigeria to come in. You look like an outsider telling people, oh, you're doing this wrong or this is. So I was really conscious of not appearing like that. And so that's how this has come about. And that's kind of just that was what that transition was like for me. It was beautiful in the sense that I was starting again, but I wasn't starting from nothing. I was starting from experience. And I think that's what's also allowed me to grow quite fast. Because when I talk to people, they're like, you've done so much in such a small amount of time. I don't feel like that sometimes. But when I sit down and like I write it out, I'm like, okay, you've done quite a bit, babe. Like, yeah. So that's what that transition was like for me.
Honestly, when I hear both our stories, there has been so many things we've both done. And it's like, you were super, super successful in the avenue you took with Angry Black Kitchen, for example. I can count the different things I've done that are successful in project management, from the different global events I've done, who I worked with. Yet we still found ourselves saying, we might be successful, but it's not our calling. And we love London. There's amazing things and opportunities that happened in London, but we're going to take a risk and come to Lagos because we see the potential and fruitfulness of what we have here.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important that we talk about, let the listeners understand the differences between Lagos and London. But positives in each, negatives in each, so that they can see how the markets were different. And, you know, since we have experiences from both, we can share that position. Okay. Do you want me to start?
I think you should, because I think I have more negatives in London than anything.
No, I think for both of us, we left London for a reason.
Exactly.
But if I have to give a positive for what London has, it's an industry that works. They are ahead in terms of they have infrastructure stability. You come in with a business and there's support in terms of you can get loans easier, you can borrow, you have businesses and corporates who are ready to take that kind of risk on you because let's say they have the budget for it.
Exactly.
You have these festivals and events that happen where they're constantly looking for either Caribbean or African descent chefs to come in. Like it's something that even if it might seem like it's not always authentic, there's always that market for it. That's what I would say.
100%. I agree with that. I think another pro for that side is probably just the fact that you're one of a handful of people doing that thing. So it sets you apart in a way that the interest is from different people, different cultures. So you're highlighting your own cultural cuisine and ingredients for them. So it's a learning experience for a lot of people, but there are a lot more people that are like interested in it, not
and
just
big companies too.
Big companies, because there's an unfamiliarity there. So it's something unknown to them, and it's almost like a marketing tactic. With marketing, it's like things that are not known to people, the ones that, because everyone's now intrigued. Their intrigue makes them want to spend money.
And let's not talk about the diversity angle that everyone is doing. You can capitalize off that in London much easier.
Much easier.
You get that there's money there.
There is money there.
But negatives. You're on your own.
That is really it. That's the biggest one.
I remember like I'll have some jobs and let's say things are just expensive there. Getting a team constantly minimum wage.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's
it's expensive. If you don't have a car, how are you getting around? London is vast. You might have a job that's an hour away from you, and how are you going to transport everything? An Uber that's over maybe 60, 70 pounds. You want to now try and be cheap. You're taking things in the tube. I've had horror stories trying to get to events sometimes. It's not here. It's a completely different thing when it comes to that. So that's what I really struggled with in London.
Okay, I think for me, travel wasn't as much a negative because I had a car.
I didn't have a car.
Yeah.
I wish I had a car.
I think it's now switched for me. Now in Nigeria, I don't have a car and it's a mare. But I think a negative for me on that side of the world, it's interesting how it's attached to a positive, in as much as there was like an intrigue and an interest in it. Eventually you kind of feel like you're a performance. It's performative.
Yeah,
it's
I agree
not
with that.
There, and that kind of takes something from you, depending on who you are and how you've been raised. It would definitely determine. But for me, it's like I felt like I was performing for white people.
Yeah,
and I don't like that.
And sometimes I don't feel like they actually fully understood that the Nigerian cuisine is quite different to Caribbean, for example. I had quite a few clients that will come to me and say, "But can you introduce maybe jerk or something?" I'm like, I have no ties with the Caribbean. I want to showcase Nigerian ingredients, but if it wasn't the things that they were familiar with, sometimes it did feel a bit more performative. I agree with that.
I think that was my biggest gripe. It just started feeling like I was performing for people I'd rather not be performing for, because we know what that history is like. So that was definitely, I used to explain it to people as I'd leave my house and I feel like I'd have to put on this mask, and then you get home and you have to take, like, having to live two lives, two versions of your one. It's a lot, and it takes a lot out of you mentally as well. And that was one of my biggest negatives.
Coming to Lagos, it's got its things, but it's home. It's home. You can be authentically yourself.
Like code switching, you don't have to do it. You can walk into somewhere and you're hearing languages you're used to. You're smelling things that nobody's gonna upturn their nose and be like, what's that smell? Like, it's that home. It does something to you. It makes you feel safe and like you belong. And there is no better feeling than being somewhere where you belong.
I completely agree. Something that I thought that I think completely changed my mind. I used to think I could be more creative in London because of all the access to produce. For example, you have every single meats and poultries and fish and vegetation at a lovely price. And you come here and it takes a bit more work to get those things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like I've been able to completely stretch my mind in creativity in ways that I probably wouldn't have if I was in London.
100%.
Because there's something about when you're on home soil and you see all the ways that we naturally use ingredients in our day-to-day, you're constantly inspired.
Yeah.
Constantly. Like I will never trade that back.
Yeah. That's my one thing. It's like if your angle is, oh, I'm highlighting Nigerian ingredients, you need to be where the Nigerian ingredients are. And there is nothing like going to the market and seeing something that, you've not seen since you were a child, or, oh my God, I remember when my mom used to make that, and then buying that thing just so you can go and see, what can I do with this now?
And rediscovering it in a different way.
Rediscovering it in a completely different way.
So let's just now, what are some of the shock factors you found coming here? That's the side for me.
To be very honest, everything was a shock. And not necessarily in a bad way, just you have an ideal in your head when you're coming from somewhere that operates the way it should operate into a place where nothing is regulated. There is no structure to most things. That you automatically go into a state of shock. And the next thing you have to do in order to not drown or stay in that state of shock is figure out how you want to navigate it. Like, do I want to be the person that meets the madness with madness? Do I want to rise above it? Do I want to, what can I say is my USP in whatever the issue is? So I think one of the main shocks for me was just how things operated. They just didn't operate the way I anticipated them operating.
And of course, it's like in London, these are not things that you actually think about. So you come in here and that's why I said maybe I was too trusting of how things just worked. And you come in and there's just things that would have never, ever been in your stratosphere of thoughts. And you're like, wow. Like it's a speechless reaction. You're like, what am I supposed to do?
What am I meant to do now?
It's different things from gas and generators, lights to logistic, or you had a supplier order and they call you saying they're not coming again.
And then they can't refund. What's that?
You make an order and the quantity isn't what you ordered, right, and they have no excuse. It's just so many different things that you have to have plan A to Z. So it makes you stronger, of course. It makes you versatile, but I would still pray it gets better.
Yes, the goal is for it to get better. That's like the whole purpose of even what we're doing, because it's like when we talk about the industry, we have to be considerate of what it means to have a functioning space.
So let me ask you, share an experience with us, like one experience when you came back that has just stayed with you. Why's your face like that? Because there's like, too many.
Which one do I single out? One experience, I think it would be my first role in an establishment. And it was just seeing how people worked, and how they asked for things that they weren't exactly sure of what it was they wanted. And there wasn't a clear vision, and how much that completely throws you for six. So in this place, they came in and they said they wanted X. And I was like, well, technically to do X, it has to look a certain way. It has to be, words mean things. People in Nigeria don't seem to get that. And then I said, what we can do is call it, they said they wanted fine dining. I said, but what you're saying I should do is not fine dining. I think it's more geared towards upscale dining. They were like, okay. And then it turned around and the F&B manager was asking me to put wings and pizzas on the menu. I'm like, but I spoke with the owners and they told me they wanted fine dining, which I've said you should probably call upscale dining, but now you're asking me for wings and pizzas and a kids menu. What are we doing? What is actually the vision here? And Yeah. And that was the toughest 3 months of my life. And you know of this firsthand because that's actually what we connected on.
Yes, exactly.
Thereafter.
And I mean, we have so much to talk about on this. But yeah, I agree with you. It's a what you asked for versus what you get. And you ask for something and you end up with a completely different vision. It's frustrating. It doesn't seem, you don't understand where it comes from, but unfortunately it's where a lot of places are here.
Yeah.
I think for me, my huge shock was more when I came in as a consultant. This is one of the experiences, and you see what a lot of restaurants are actually working with, and the lack of investment for the kitchen, the chefs, the actual culinary part of a restaurant. Like, you want to open a restaurant, but 80-90% of your investment is in ambience and decor,
furniture and decor.
But when it comes to what people are actually eating, it's a last thought. Or where your chefs are going to work. It's a last thought.
They build the restaurant before the kitchen.
Exactly. You'd walk into this restaurant, you would see, oh, it's lovely, lovely velvet chairs, high ceilings, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful lights. So where's the kitchen?
In that corner.
Always a corner. And you walk in, and I kid you not, it's literally a box. And let's say that box, in an international comparison, will probably have maybe 2 chefs working in one aspect of the cuisine. Inside, you have 10 to 12, 15 chefs working in that box on top of each other. And so many things cross my mind. Where is the structure? Who's doing what? Which section is working meat? Which section is working
cold section?
Which one is pastry? All this. On top of that, how is there not going to be cross-contamination happening? Is this safe? Is this legal? That's another topic. So to me, that was such a huge factor, because that has literally caused a permanent tattoo in my brain of the problems and the fundamental mindsets we have to shift, that culinary, chefs, food, cuisine should be the reasons you open a restaurant, not ambience and
just wanting to make money. It's not enough. It's not enough just want to make money. There has to be a greater vision. And if there isn't, maybe this industry is not for you. And that's okay, because there's so many ways to make money.
Exactly. It's so we have the same stories, and I think it's perfect that this is why we're here. This is our baby. This is our podcast, and it leads us so naturally to what this, like, the main thing we want to uncover throughout the series. But we can touch on it now, is just where we are in this industry. What have we seen coming in, and let's take a spotlight and showcase to our listeners where we are. But most importantly, what is the ideal situation for the industry? So we're going to take you to school for a second. We have 4 factors, right?
4 factors
that we think a successful industry successfully exhibits.
Right. So I feel like one of the 4 factors of an ideal culinary hospitality industry is intentionality.
We're starting with gunshots. Repeat it again.
Intentionality. It is so important to have a vision and stick with it. It is so important to understand why you want to open an establishment.
For sure.
It is so important to understand what it means to be a service-led business. Another thing is just that if you say you want a certain thing, stick to that certain thing. Words mean things. If you want to do upscale dining, do upscale. Everything doesn't need to be on your menu. The vision has to be clear. Everything has to align with it. The way your staff interacts with people, the way your front of house works, the way your menu is, the kind of drinks you have. The service you're given has to match the vision you have for the business. Being intentional about every aspect of your business is such an important factor in us building an industry that can be recognized on a worldwide scale and that most importantly functions.
I think to even go off the back of that, intentionality comes with taking time to really understand what you want. I think
Exactly.
when you don't rush the process and you take time to do market research, see where you fit in, does your vision of what you want to bring in align with what the market is able
Looking
to
for.
carry? Or, you know, it comes with time. You can't rush intention. You can't rush it. You end up cheating and putting factors that are not important above other things, and
Cutting corners.
you're cutting corners.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I think the second one for me is regulations. And I say that with regulations, we have to also consider we're definitely in a space that is unregulated as a whole. But if you look at the places that function and that work, they are heavily regulated, and these things are, they stick to it. So there are standards in place, there are protocols in place, they have health and safety, standardization, things that are expected, there are employment laws in place, there's salary structure in place. We don't do that here. And it is one of the biggest shortcomings.
Yeah.
Because without these things in place, people are being cheated, people are opening things that don't stand the test of time, people are, you know, serving food out of places that are not, you shouldn't be eating out, quite frankly. And without regulations, eventually everything just becomes a shit show. So regulation is such an important factor, because when things are not regulated, every man for himself.
I think it's the foundation for
everything. Yeah. So it's, in as much as it applies to this, it applies to everything.
And it sets the standard of what businesses should be able to, what businesses can open and stay open.
Exactly.
Those are good. I think the next one I would talk about is infrastructure. And again, similar to regulations, I think it applies in all avenues of a functioning society.
Exactly.
But when we're looking at the industry, I look at logistics, for example, how things are working up and down the value chain, suppliers and protection of agriculture, farmers, how we transport things within the nation. We look at, when I say logistics, how a supplier is able to successfully transport our produce around the nation as well as internationally, if that was an angle we should be looking to take.
We should be, definitely.
Education and training, for example, is so important in infrastructure, because if you have an educated workforce, you're able to do so much more with them. We look internationally at industries that work. The workforce is, they understand the industry, they understand what it means to be in hospitality, they have common sense, they can be part of the equity of a business, because they can also give valid points on how to improve as a business.
And they don't just see it as a means to an end role.
Exactly.
Which is so important.
It is valuable to them. They learn a lot from it. And the retention of staff ends up staying
a lot longer.
You know, and training, do you have enough chefs or enough managers that can take your business and work as if it was their own? So infrastructure to me is super important. And then lastly, this is like my favorite one, just because I love to talk about it. I would say variety. A functioning industry understands the different levels that a business can run in, from fast food, street food, all the way up to fine dining. There is not one or the other. Let me teach you some words. I mean, there's so many different levels we have within that linear example I'm giving. You've got fast food and street food. Then you've got cafes, diners,
yeah.
You've got bistros and
fast casual as well.
Yes, fast casual. You've got upscale.
Yeah.
You've got gourmet. So let's say you're not doing fine dining, but you're doing a level that meets a certain level of good excellence. I would say you are a upscale or gourmet establishment.
100%.
Upscale, I would say, is just before fine dining. Then, of course, you've got fine dining, which covers, you may be fine dining and not be Michelin level, but you might just offer some experiences that give you that fine dining mark. But each word means something. Each word positions you in a different category, and it attracts different customers. It attracts a different price point, and it attracts a different offering. Each one has a different focus, a different intentionality, a different business model. So variety allows every single person within the nation to have something that they meet with, or have options in what they want to dine with. but you need to have these different levels to be a functioning culinary industry and also meet the level that you say you are. Do not call yourself fine dining when you are, in fact, a
Fast
bistro.
casual.
And do not call yourself a bistro if you are a cafe. You know, we can't just be using these words.
Words mean things. And I think that's one of our biggest failings, is not holding things to the right standards. You can't, like Via said, you cannot call yourself one thing and be doing something completely different. If you're a cafe, I'm not gonna lie, I don't expect to see jollof rice and amala there. If you're a pizzeria, I don't expect to see Chinese there. Do you get what I mean? Like, words mean things, and there's also there's a level of success that comes from being able to say, this is what I do, and you stick with it, and you're so exemplary at it that when they say, oh, best cafe somewhere, or what cafe can I go to, people think of you. You understand what it means to own in on your specialty. I don't know, however you say, you know how to own in on the thing you say you know you can do, and no one can say no, they're not doing it right. It's so important, and it's a great marker of success, and that's just something, food for thought.
Yeah, exactly.
No pun intended.
I think we've actually touched on the differences between what works and where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can still delve in just a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So let's look at, for example, the restaurant culture that we do have here.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that you feel we have potential to do more of? And what are the things that we could definitely work on?
I think we have a lot more to work on. I think there's just a constant need, like I say, there's a constant need to want to improve.
Mm-hmm.
So in restaurant culture, for instance, it's just a thing of even like wanting to have staff that are diligent, or having staff that are diligent, that know what it means to run a business where they're customer facing. And I'm not a big advocate for the customers always right, but I'm a big advocate for the people that are dealing with your customers knowing how to handle the situations, because the customers are not always right, and that's okay.
But also, how do you deal with it? Like
how
you
is
said,
it dealt with?
It's a service industry. It is required some sort of training or experience.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's important that everyone who wants to open a business understands the importance of hospitality, at least doing some sort of course on how to run a service-led business.
100%.
So I definitely agree with that. And like you said, it links into workforce culture, because is your workforce a second thought, or are you building with your team from the ground up?
Yeah. That's a major thing, and it's not something, I think it's something we're starting to see a bit more of now.
I mean, I think you can relate, both of us being consultants. When did you get us to come on?
Okay. So, yes, when I have consulted with some places, you get there and they've kind of already hired. I'm like, what is the criteria you've used to hire? And sometimes it's not up to par. But if that client is then willing to take on training for their staff, there's a level of respect I have, because there is the workforce you have in Nigeria is not exactly the best. A lot of people do go into the hospitality and restaurant, go for those roles just because they see them as a means to an end, not because, I want to be a chef, this is my aspiration. It's just that I need a salary at the end of the month. So even if you take those kind of people on and you are able to impart on them why it's important for them to be trained, and why it's important to them to appear a certain kind of way and communicate with guests a certain kind of way, I can respect that. I do think I'm seeing quite a few places that are like, okay, we're bringing on a consultant for hiring, we're bringing on a consultant, so that it works from the start.
Because you end up losing money, because you're going to have to redo 100%. Everything. So I think from a monetary point of view, it's more efficient for you to bring in an expert from the beginning.
From the start.
And like you said, it's a slow progress, but we're getting there. And I think we've touched on the issues, and I do want to, also mention some things that we can inspire to do better. So we also end in a bit more of a positive. And for me, I just think there's just so much more we can do with the diversity of our offerings. We love to carry a trend and ride it all the way to the end. And I think there is just so much that can be done with Nigerian food, for example, and how to bring in other cuisines or other various ways of fusion. And when I speak about Nigerian food, I do feel, for example, I would love to see our street food have a bit more structure, to see food markets and opportunities for vendors to have, the place or the market or the foundation to show their services. And to me, street food is a massive way of bringing in food tourism, which the government could take very seriously and regulate, and people can know that there's a place they can go for standardized, approved in terms of health and safety, to get all your suyas, your indomies, your roadside
whatever
corn,
it
whatever it is
your
you love
akara,
to eat. And then on
that.
the same angle, if I take it up to different types of dining, like we said, not everything is fine dining. I would love to see how we can showcase all our ingredients in all the different levels, more bistros, more lunch spots, casual spots that we can go, where food is just amazing. Like, one thing I miss, for example, is, at least if you go to London, for example, you kind of find like a sandwich, a lovely sandwich shop, a pizzeria, a sushi restaurant that is affordable, but the food is still great. So I would love to see that as well. And I think there's so much potential with that here in Nigeria.
I agree. And I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that we can't answer all of this.
We can't. That's why we're here.
Episode, but that's why we're here. So the aim is for us to do that over the period of this season and the continuation of the podcast, and bring on people that are credible, that can have these conversations, that can educate us as a whole.
And we have some amazing guests coming. Like,
we do.
You guys just need to anticipate the level of credible professionals coming in, as well as people who have just been in the game for a long time, and we can really pick their brains.
And I think the end goal for that is for it to inspire us all to just act, to do the work diligently,
with intention,
and that then creates scope for growth, scope for improvement, and that, God willing, catapults us onto like a worldwide front. And it's not just all of us in our little bubble, doing it internally. There's room for expansion there.
Exactly.
Because we're on the continent. We're in Africa. It is the most fertile land in the world. There is so much we have to show the world. And we can't wait for other people to come in and help us get there, or for them to take it and present it to the world how they see fit. We have to own our own narratives.
Exactly. Amazing. So we have one more little segment. And I think it's both our favorites.
Yes,
it's called the One Bite segment.
The One Bite segment.
So, Wumi, do you want to introduce? What is the One Bite segment?
The One Bite segment is literally just us discussing something that we've seen going around on social media, or in our little chef culinary circles, whether it's like on a little group chat or whatever forums it is that we're part of. And we're just going to talk about it briefly. So it's a bit less formal, might be a bit shady, but everybody will be okay.
Exactly. It's like a hot topic.
Yeah.
Because we're hot.
A little one. Just one bite. Nothing too much. So what's our one bite for today, B?
So I think because this has been kind of introductory of the chef world, I think it's important we look at the topic of what is a chef.
What is a chef?
This question has been of recent, I think, swarming around social media, and everyone has their interpretation of what a chef is. And I think it started off quite humorous. Relatively humorous, with a tweet that we saw.
A bit cheeky.
A cheeky tweet.
It was very cheeky, but we'll
we
let
giggled.
It slide.
We giggled. And it was...
do you remember what it said?
It says there are 3 types of chefs.
In Nigeria.
You've got a professional chef, social media, like Instagram or TikTok chef. Then you have the Buchi mix chef. So what's your one bite from that?
My one bite from that is the person that did that made that list. Your theory is flawed, because technically the social media TikTok chef is the same as the Buchi mix chef, because they wouldn't get a Buchi mix if they were not on social media or TikTok. And please, how do I get a Buchi mix? But so it is slightly flawed, but I also feel like there was a bit of shade in there. There were certain things that were going around after that, people were saying, oh yes, Buchi mix is better because they do X, Y, and Z and other things. And it was just like, the theory to start with is flawed.
Yeah.
And the responses that came from it they were kind of pitting people against one another, and it seemed quite disingenuous. That was my take on it. What about you?
I fully agree with you. For me, I think I want to give my one bite on just championing chefs.
Yeah.
And to do that, I think it's important to categorize or define what a chef is. And if you go online, a chef is a professional, I don't actually use the word cook, but a professional cook who has a level of authority. So they can be the chief of a restaurant, an establishment, their company. They have experience. They have done the work to get that title. The same way you cannot call a doctor without going through training. Even after that training, they may not necessarily be called doctor until they've done the practical work. So I'm not necessarily saying you have to have gone to culinary school, but there is training. You can get that training in a restaurant. You can get that training shadowing a very famous chef and then working in the industry enough to get that title. And when I see chefs who have done those things, they are so amazing. And I cannot just put them in the same category as a TikTok. Media. You know, I first started off on the social media space, and we're going to go through this in other episodes, but there's so much value in either one. And I will not pit them against each other.
Exactly.
But the one thing that one does is not necessarily the thing that the other one does.
Exactly.
And that's why I think because of social media, there has become a blur of what the word means and what value each one brings. And for example, with social media, anyone can be anything.
Yes.
And you can call yourself, and it's in any industry. I mean, you see TikTok medics, you see TikTok dentists, you see TikTok lawyers. But professionals might be a bit wary of what they're saying. So social media has blurred that line.
Definitely.
So that tweet, all the jokes it was, let's not say the professional chefs are not doing what they're doing because they're doing amazing things. The same way the Bucci Mix chefs.
They're doing interesting things, and kudos to you, because there's some things you see sometimes, you're like, wow, I never thought of that. And I think it's also important to understand that we can always learn from each other.
Exactly.
Always. It's so important. Yes, there are maybe skills and techniques that I may know because, you know, I've gone out of my way to learn certain things, and you know, I see a beauty mix chef making something more traditional, but I'm then able to be like, oh, technically, if I took that and I mix it with this technique or this skill that I know, then it will give me a different end product.
Exactly.
So my biggest one bite from this entire conversation is really just the fact that we can all learn from each other. No one's work is more superior to the others. There is a lot to learn, and in learning, new things come about, and that's really it.
And each one has their own strengths. Understand where each one lies, like each category lies. And I think with the power of social media, we can learn from each other, and the information is better transferred.
Exactly.
And if you're humble enough to say what one person is doing, I can actually learn from, that's when we're going to improve.
Go places. I agree with that.
So Wu,
yes,
guess what?
What have we done?
We just made it through our first podcast episode.
Woohoo! Like, genuinely, I hope you guys are cheering behind your screens, because this is a big feat.
It is.
I hope we've given you all a little bite of what's to come.
See what she did there?
I'm glad you picked up on that. I felt really, well, that was quite smart. So basically, you can find us everywhere it is that you listen to podcasts. We will also be giving you visual content on YouTube, because I know some of you prefer to watch, and I would want to watch me too.
Don't kill me. So please follow, like, subscribe, comment, and please share our channels with anyone and everyone who is interested in the food space and what we're talking about. And you can find our username below at One Bite Pod.
Yep. I also want us to thank our partners, Woodscope, for the space, for allowing us to record in this stunning space, and our production house, Arrow House Studios, who are allowing you guys to watch us be beautiful and listen to our gorgeous voices.
And we cannot stop before thanking our sponsors, Tommy, for keeping us hydrated throughout this whole podcast series. And we look forward to dishing it all out with you
this season
on one bite
at a time.
At a time.
Okay. Thank you guys. Bye.